On this episode, we talk with Carl Barnhill about how to visually communicate the gospel. Well, hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast. I am your host, Kendall Connor, coming to you today from North Carolina. Our goal with this podcast is simple. We just love to have conversations that empower healthy churches. And let me tell you, we have a great one for you today. Joining us is someone who has served the church for a long time and has made a major impact in the world of church media. And that person is the one, the only Carl Barnhill. Now, Carl is a creative entrepreneur. He is a motion designer as well as an author. He is the founder and owner of Church Visuals, a company that helps ministry leaders to visually communicate the gospel. Carl has served in ministry for over 20 years, working at some of the largest and most influential churches and ministries around the country, including New Spring, Pine Lake Church, and Precept Ministries International. He is a popular speaker, and he is the host of the Your Visuals Matter podcast. You can find Carl with his wife and two sons in Columbia, South Carolina. I know that you're going to love this guy. And so without further ado, let's jump into our conversation today with Carl Barnhill. Well, hey there, Carl. How are you? Thanks for joining us today.
Kendall, man, thank you so much. This has been a long time coming. I know that I'm in South Carolina and you are in North Carolina, and we've kind of crossed paths over the years and just recently connected maybe a few months ago, a year ago. So, man, this has been a long time coming. So appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
I'm telling you. And I love that we have that in common. We got the Carolina connection there, right?
We know how barbecue works is what's going on.
Yes, this is just a reminder to me that we need to try to get together in person sometime. The podcast is a good first. Next step, right? We got to get together.
I would love it, buddy.
No, that's awesome. Well, I just read off your public bio, but I always like to ask this when folks come on the show. What is something that doesn't make that public bio that maybe all your friends and family would know about you?
Okay, so all my friends and family know that I'm a big movie guy.
Nice.
So when my wife and I were buying a house, there were two must-haves, or not really must-have, but wants.
Yeah.
Okay. And one was a screened-in porch for my wife, and the other was a movie room. Okay, so instead of having like a man garage, right, I have a movie room, and I am a nerd with movie posters, with memorabilia, with toys and assorted movie collectibles in my movie room.
Awesome.
Right around the hall. So with the screen and projector and everything. So nerds unite, buddy. I'm a movie buff. Another thing is I am a fan of 80s and 90s music. So if my family will attest to, like, if they say something, it could very well move into a song from the 80s that I have to finish.
So all of your references are either movie references, I'm hearing, or either they're 80s or 90s popular songs. Is that right?
Exactly right. I talk in movie and song quotes to my family and friends all the time, to their great annoyance. So,
if you work some of those in during this conversation, I'm just going to say I'm not going to be mad about it.
Okay.
I'm almost at this point going to be listening for those at this point. So
you don't stop believing it's going to be there, Kendall.
And I don't want to skip past this. You mentioned on your must-have list for your home that you had to have that screened-in porch. I'm telling you, we got this in common because I'm just right in North Carolina, and our home that we're in, where I'm recording from today, we have a screened-in porch, and that is a must. So now it sounds like I just need to add the movie room to catch up with you.
Exactly right. So the gnats and the assorted bugs of the Carolinas. The screen-in porch is a must-have.
is a must. No, that's so very true. This is for anyone who didn't know that, hasn't had a visit to the Carolinas. Now they're going to take so much away from this today, hearing this. No,
right. Exactly. Barbecue and gnats. That's what we have.
Yes, that's exactly right. Well, no, this is good. I know that, you just we shared a little bit about your journey in your bio, but I know that you have been working with churches. You have spent a lot of time with your company that you started, Church Visuals. Tell us a little bit about your journey and kind of what has inspired you to help. Really, you could say you've dedicated your career to church visuals, to helping churches to visually communicate the gospel. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you got into this thing?
Sure, yeah. So I started in radio in college and managed a radio station for a while and did radio. And then I worked at Precept Ministries International. This was a lady named Kay Arthur. I came in as an editor on her Bible teaching programs. So almost think like TBN, blue hair Bible teaching program. It's kind of like that. Not as bad, but kind of like that. So came in as an editor. When I was in radio, I started kind of seeing radio kind of going out and video kind of coming in. We're talking 25 years ago, right? So I started at Precept and did editing for a while, led that media team for a while as my boss and his boss left. Learned a lot about leadership there, learned a lot about studying the Bible for myself there. Really grounded me. I'm thankful for that. And then I moved into church world. My dad's a pastor, so I've known ministry space, and I've worked with churches, but and was on staff as a student pastor. But at this point in my career, I moved from Precept to a really large church in Mississippi. This was a church of I think we had like 20,000 on a Sunday, something like that.
Oh, wow.
5 campuses at the time, somewhere in there. And I was the only content creator. We had a communications team that would help with some designs and graphics and stuff. But as far as video, motion graphics, I was it. I was the only guy for big church, for kids ministry, student ministry, every other ministry in the church, men's, women's, other campuses, everything. And I was it. And then I also had to do the Sunday morning experience. So I was leading the volunteers to execute Sunday at the broadcast campus, leading the volunteer team. It was a lot. So I started thinking, or God kind of laid it on my heart, that if I'm the only guy at a church this size, there's bound to be churches that are smaller than this, a lot smaller than this. The average size church is around 100. I've heard like 64 people now, so right around 100 or so. So that's the average size church across America. There's no way a church of 100 people is going to bring in a guy like me. And so I would, as I looked in the space, I'm going, you're struggling to reach people. And part of that is because your visuals are not as appealing or compelling as you might want them to be, but you might not have the time, budget, resources to make that happen. And so that led me on a journey of starting a company. I worked at another church for a little bit. After that, I was thinking I would be there longer, but I wasn't, because the business kind of took off pretty quick. That business was called 1230 Media. And then we later rebranded to Church Visuals, just to make it very clear what we do, what we want to be known for.
Sure.
But that started in 2015 of me being full-time, doing nothing but helping churches look better. But not just that, because that's not the end goal, right? The end goal is not to just look great or save time, which those are byproducts. Those are great benefits.
Good things, right?
But the point is for them to see salvation and spiritual growth in their church. So how can we help you communicate the gospel using visual media? So it started out as just me. And then my wife came on full time for a little while, and then kind of slowly, gradually, Our staff has grown. We have about 30 people on staff at this point, of designers and motion designers. And, it's very interesting. I rarely do a video now. I rarely produce video or graphics. It's more me kind of helping run the business. And so that's a little bit of kind of my past and how I got here, but it's crazy to kind of watch God move and see. When I started, there weren't that many people in the space. Since then, there's been more, of us kind of come in the space. But back then, it was, it was Lone Ranger a little bit.
Right. Still pretty new. And I love that you said that you started, I imagine in those very early days, you were the guy, right? You were making everything. You were having to figure out everything with the business and all of those things. But I love that you said now, you've been able to build a team around you. Has that been a challenge? Has that been something that has come easy?
No. The biggest challenge that I've faced is how do we transition from me doing all the work? Now that was only the first couple years of the business, and then we realized very quickly we need to grow. But to determine how can, and maybe this sounds arrogant, but how can we hire people that can maintain the quality that I was maintaining, and also make it affordable for the church, right? Yes. So that was the challenge. That was the biggest hurdle that I faced in our business, is how do we balance that? How can I lead a team and keep the quality high for the churches that we already serve, and the new churches that are going to come on, new churches and ministries that are going to come on? And can we keep the price low? Because with it just being me, I just needed to support my family. But now it's, I'm supporting we have to support the whole business and still make it affordable for the church. So has that come easy? Absolutely not. But I think we've gotten to a place at this point where we kind of found a groove.
No, that's awesome. And you do so much great work with church visuals. I know that, with my background, close to 10 years working with church motion graphics, CMG, seeing all the work that goes into making graphics that are used in churches. I see that it doesn't come easy, right? And that a lot goes into it, but it does have a big impact. And now you've been able, with church visuals, you've been able to provide, you have mini movies and graphics and things like that you're actually contributing to some of the stores that we have with Share Faith and with CMG and with Ministry Brands Amplify. And so that's pretty amazing that, that even seeing what you're able to do, you're helping, you're spreading the wealth a little bit, because we have it available in our stores and those things like that. And it's also available in your stores. And I mean, it's amazing. You're making a big impact.
Thank you, man. Well, it's a interesting thing in that people kind of see church visuals and church motion graphics and worship house media and Igniter media and the kind of these companies out there. And the myth is they're all in competition with each other. But the reality is we kind of know each other. We're throwing business to each other. I mean, I remember Jeff McIntosh would be like, I don't really want to do custom. I'll send this person over to you. Absolutely. And CMG would focus more on ready-made, and we would focus on ready-made and custom, and we would take some of the, so, and we're great friends with people in the community. I know you are as well. So it's a little bit interesting in that there's more of a camaraderie in the space than a competition. And maybe people don't usually see that or know that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and it while there are a number of companies in different places that offer what you're saying is so true. The community is definitely there, right? Like being able to call up or shoot a message over to these different folks is one of the best things about kind of that world. Now, I've something that I want to touch on, because you're making all these graphics, you're making all these videos and all these things. I've actually heard you say before that your visuals for a church, your visuals matter because the gospel matters. And I'm just kind of curious, there may be someone who's watching or listening to this today that just thinks like, okay, church visuals, yeah, that sounds great. But can you just speak to why something like this is important?
Yes. So your visuals are not, obviously, that's not what saves people. It's the Holy Spirit that saves people. However,
Yeah.
we live in a culture that is extremely visual. The stats show it to the extreme, that video and visuals are the way that we consume content. The visual, the stats on how much, let's say, teenagers watch YouTube, or the stats on if you scroll and there's a video, you stop faster than you would a text post, things like that, to be specific. Okay.
Right.
We live in a visual culture. Our brain processes visuals so much faster than text or spoken word. I mean, crazy fast. The stats, I don't know how true this is. I do share this stat in a breakout that I usually teach, that the brain processes a visual 60,000 times faster than text. 60,000 times.
Wow.
Faster. So is a picture worth 1,000 words? Well, almost. You could make an argument that it's actually worth 60,000 words, right? So
that's good. Yeah.
So we process visuals constantly and faster. So also, too, let's take a sermon on a Sunday morning. If you preach a sermon, 3 days later, a person will remember 10% of what you told them. If you speak to them, or if they read something, they will remember about 10% of it. If you show them something, that stat goes to 80%. So you just think
from
if
10
you're preaching
to 80, right?
10 to 80. Yep. So if you're preaching a sermon, all they're doing is listening to you. They're going to absorb your message 10% 3 days later.
Wow.
If you show them a visual, they're going to remember that visual 80 times more or 70 times more. So 80% during the week. So wouldn't we want to use tools to allow our congregation to grasp the message faster and absorb the message longer? That is the point, right? For us to have them live out their faith, not just to be cool. You've worked in some very cool places, right? We know how to do the concert thing. We know how to look cool. Me and you know how to push the buttons and make the things happen to make it look cool. If that's the only reason why we're doing it, we should just pack it up, in my opinion.
Right.
I want to do the visual so that you can see salvation and spiritual growth happen at your church. So your visuals matter because the gospel matters, because you want to get their attention and you want to keep their attention and you want them to absorb the gospel and keep it longer. So it matters.
Man, that's so good. And, for those who may still be hesitant about this, right? Like maybe they just say, okay, well, there's something powerful about just preaching. You know what I mean? Like that spoken word is really what we do. I don't know that we need to visuals and need to have a part of it. Is using visual communication something new? Or, is this something that, obviously they didn't have projectors or LED screens, right, in biblical times. But is that something that you can kind of see throughout Scripture, or have been used in the church in the past?
Absolutely. So I would say in the Old Testament and the New Testament, visuals were used a lot. I'll give you a few examples. So in the Old Testament, Noah's Ark, when he's building the ark, that is a massive visual for people around the time, right? They're walking up, seeing this boat being built, and they are mocking him. Noah, you've lost it, bro. Like, what are you doing? But it was a visual, especially it was a visual when the rain started coming down and the place started to flood and he and his family and animals start riding off in the boat. Boy, that's a visual. The rainbow is a visual,
right.
Of God's faithfulness to Noah and his family. Let's take Elijah. Elijah, the altar, the fire. Same kind of thing, right? Elijah is saying, hey, put some more water on it. They're dumping the water. It's a visual that wood is soaked in water. It's also a visual when that thing starts to explode with fire. That was once those dudes saw that, okay, true God, right? Yours is the true God. I can see it. Wow, that was incredible. That was a visual. I would say New Testament, Jesus used parables all the time, used things of the day to give you a visual picture of what he's talking about. The kingdom of heaven is like this. It's like this. It's like that. Now put a picture in your brain on what the kingdom of heaven is like. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. So, you could go over other New Testament, the book of Revelation, John's visions, when the skies open it up and he's seeing whatever he's seeing when he's writing down Revelation. Those were visuals that he saw. So, yeah, it's totally biblical. And I think that our modern visual media is not a new thing. It's an extension of an old thing. Yeah. It's it's using the technology, it's using the parable of the day to preach the gospel, to communicate the gospel in an effective and visual and memorable way.
No, that is such a great way of putting it. And I love that you said it's an extension. It's building upon kind of these concepts that we've seen used in the past. And that's so good. You spoke to this a little bit. You said that we live in a highly visual culture. Why do you think that visuals are so effective, right? Like why did they do such a good job of capturing the attention of people and maybe even just trying to teach them something spiritual, right?
Man, I think we were made for it. One thing I think of with this is, do you know those like military homecoming videos where like the kids in school and they don't know this, but the dad is walking into the classroom? What happens when that kid looks over? Boy, that's a visual. Like, right? Once he sees his dad come home, there is an immediate reaction and a super emotional reaction.
Full disclosure, any of those videos come on, I'm going to be crying. I'm just going to say
it. Yeah. I'm not crying. You're crying. Exactly right. Our brain, we're made for it. I think our brain works that way. We process it that way. We absorb messages faster. We retain messages longer. I don't know. I would say God just made us visual. God made us where that is the case. The brain works that way. Our eyes work that way. And sometimes it is that visual can do a lot of things, but an emotional response sometimes is what a visual brings. If I see, that's why I'm thinking of like the Sarah McLachlan pet videos, right? In the eyes of the angel, right? What am I showing?
I'm so glad that you sang that instead of me. I got to tell you,
I am not a worship leader. I am not a singer by any means. If you don't mind cutting that out. But what is on screen when she's singing that? It's puppies. It's like animals in trouble. Why? Because I want the visual they want the visual to move me, right? Yes. That's how it works.
No, that's
you're going to sing the next one, not me. So
yeah. Well, I think what you're saying is true. And I think about myself, right? And I even am trying to listen. This is coming at a good time, and you're talking about how your visuals make a difference in a message. I think about for those who speak this past Sunday, and I don't always do this at our church, but occasionally, a few times a year, I'm the one that goes up there and will deliver the message. And it just so happens at the time of this recording, this past Sunday, I got up and I was the one who delivered the message. And I think about I said so much, right? But at the very end, I was able to show a photo, and that's something that I love to work in, whenever possible. But it was a really special moment because I was highlighting, I was telling the story of my oldest son, Calvin, got baptized not too long ago. And I put up a picture, and I got to tell you, serving in ministry, talking about the highlight of the time that I've spent in ministry. My oldest son, Calvin, asked if I would be the one to baptize him. Awesome. And I showed this picture and I told this story of kind of the conversations that we had leading up to that. I'm telling you, that photo it elevated it so much, right? Because it's not just words, right? It's not just that. It was already a great, and of course, an emotional story. I was an absolute wreck, Carl, telling this story, but I remember showing it, and I just knew, I was like, I know if I can show that photo and show it, it will take them right back to that moment with me, right? I think that's the power of a visual, but it's not always just that, right? I think about the power of being able to show, if you're talking about a Sermon on the Mount, right? Showing the mountain, talking about a journey, showing a trail, these different things. I feel like that can elevate a message so much farther. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think you're in North Carolina. We just recently experienced the Hurricane Helene here,
right?
In kind of South Carolina, North Carolina area. And it's one thing to say, hey, North Carolina got hit bad.
Yeah.
It's another thing to show you a picture of complete landscapes that were moved around because of that.
Yes.
It brings, oh my goodness. Like there's a connection there way over you just hearing that happened.
100%.
The visual helps.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, I love this. I hope that this will kind of inspire leaders serving in their churches, right? To just kind of challenge themselves a little bit to think of, okay, how can, whatever I'm doing, how can I bring visuals into that? Do you have any examples of just ways that that church leaders could start to use visuals more?
Yes, it's interesting. When I'm at conferences and stuff, I have to realize that I will jump to how to use visuals. And one thing that I've realized is there's a lot of churches, especially smaller churches, that like, wait a second, I'm a kids leader. I'm in a kids room. We don't have a TV, so I don't know what you're talking to me about this for. Or like, how do we do that? Well, so I would say like you have to start with installing screens in your space. You have to, and if you don't have one, maybe you roll one in, or you bring one in, or you show it on a laptop or something. You have to have a screen in your space, and then a presentation software. So ProPresenter is the industry standard for that, but there's also other presentation software on the market. There's also things like Playlister or Sign Presenter that is kind of an online thing that you don't have to have a subscription for. Sure. It's more of like I think Playlister you do, but it's an easier online thing that you could use if you don't have a computer to hook with the screen and all that. So anyway, I would say screen first, then presentation software. And then I would start with ready-made media. This is an area that me and you have lived in for a long time. And that is media that is ready to go. That's done by a professional designer, graphic designer, or professional videographer or video editor or motion designer. That is like plug and play. You download, you put it in your presentation software, you put it on your screen. It's ready to go. Now, I would say a step after that is edit those things. So if you have a graphic from CMG or from Church Visuals, that like a template that you bring down, and we both make them where they're editable, to where you can bring them down and edit the text to your context. So instead of Happy Father's Day, you want to say celebrating fathers. You can do that. So I would say those are some very easy practical steps. That's kind of the journey that you need to go to. If you're past that, we can talk about custom media and things like that if you're kind of past that. But I would start in those spots.
No, that's great. And I love that you brought up you've got to have a screen, right? Like you've got to have a way to show those things. And you mentioned ProPresenter. I'm trying to think of some other presentation softwares: Easy Worship, Media Shout, Proclaim.
Right. Proclaim.
There's a new free one that's really popular. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Free Show, maybe I think is the name of that. And then you mentioned Playlister as well. That's something that's a neat one to mention. We just started using that at our church to be able to get kids content to all the different TVs that we have in the different areas.
It's great for kids. It's great for digital signage.
Yes.
Kind of not a cheaper solution, but a solution for a different context. It doesn't necessarily have to be on a laptop and hooked to a screen. You can kind of do it online and that.
Yeah, that's great. I know that with church visuals, you've been able to help churches communicate through sermon graphics, right? Branding around those, kids ministry content, student ministry content. Can you just share a little bit about the kind of different ways and different ministries that how you can use media, the stuff that you've created, and maybe just touch on how leaders can make sure that what they're doing is making a difference?
Yeah, so we do ready-made media, and we also do custom media. So organizations like Answers in Genesis or Outreach or Tithely, and then a lot of churches will come to us for custom media. So we're making their stuff from scratch. That we deliver to them. It's custom. It's all done specifically for them. So we kind of live in both of those spaces. And so I would say for a pastor or a ministry leader, I would start with a couple of things off the bat. I would say start with a clear message. Know what message you're trying to deliver. Don't just pull a graphic because it looks cool. Back up a step and go, what is God calling me to do? What's the message that I need to deliver? And if something exists in the ready-made space that helps you communicate that message, use that. If that doesn't exist, you might come to somebody like us or a part-timer or another service like us that would do a custom media project for you, a custom sermon series design or video or whatever. So start with a clear message. Then I would say know your audience. Don't go crazy modern if if 95% of your congregation is more traditional, or vice versa. Like know your audience. Know I'm not saying you don't want to kind of help them get there, but don't go like extreme, because you're not going to connect with the people. So kind of feel your audience, know your audience, and spend some time thinking through that, and knowing what not only what to communicate, but how to communicate it. Then I would say the last thing here, I would say stay consistent. Like don't get crazy. It goes back just because you have the fonts on your computer doesn't mean you have to use them. So I would say slow down your brand, calm everything down, and stay consistent. So if your church brand has one font or two fonts, everything should stay in those two fonts. So if you're doing a promotional piece, that would be my first question: is what are your fonts? What is your look? What's your brand? So stay consistent across the board. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel on every single graphic or every single thing. Kind of stay in your brand. Be consistent.
And I'm just thinking for, simple ways that you could immediately bring visuals into your worship services, simple things like having a video countdown at the beginning of the service is a great way to just get people excited and kind of build that anticipation before things begin, or just having, as you begin your message, or if you're doing a series, having a dedicated graphic, goes so far. Again, just helps people to remember, even gets people excited. Okay, I know this Sunday we're starting a series, and you've got a graphic you can share on social media, right? You can advertise it in the weeks ahead, letting them know kind of what to expect. I feel like that goes a long way. Absolutely,
it does. And it helps cohesion. Like if I see it on social media and I walk into the church on Sunday, I'm in the right place. I know what's coming. Like it just helps kind of everything come together.
Yeah. And I mean, probably one of the ways that I can think to make like a big splash in definitely in a message, but in an entire service really is, I think about mini movies, or, I'm trying to think, there's different terms that people call them, but these short videos, right? That I know that church visuals, I know that you have made, I know because we have some of them in our stores that we have, but they can make such a big impact, in a message. You're trying to talk about faith or having trust in God or whatever the subject may be. Even holidays, we've got holidays coming up. Having something that reminds people about the real meaning of Christmas and things like that. Right. Sometimes I feel like those videos, they can say it in a way that is so much more than just something the spoken word on a Sunday, right?
100%.
Yeah, they're so good, and they're also just really easy. I think maybe that's the encouraging way. I mean, you're trying to bring a little bit of a special element to your worship service, and for you and I, we know that you can go and download them and, pay a small amount and you can just download it and throw it in your presentation software. Right. But, someone coming in they think like, oh man, like this is, this is so next level. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I think those pieces really do help. So if you go to a CMG or a Church Visuals and you download a mini movie, also too, we're trying to make them so affordable. And you can get stuff, a la carte, right, or you can do a subscription where it saves you. We're really trying to make, I know you have this heart too, of just making things as high quality as we can at the most affordable price for ministry as we can. So the prices are really affordable for you. And they really make such a difference in your communication.
Oh, I love that. Really quick. I mean, some people may hear this all today and they may think like, okay, that's great, but I'm overwhelmed. Well, what would you tell somebody that just getting ready to take that first step into starting to use visuals at their church?
I would say start with ready-made media. So go on to churchvisuals.com, go on to churchmotiongraphics.com, find us online and search through the libraries and pray through what God would be telling you to communicate, or if God's already laid it on your heart, what to preach, what to communicate. Yeah. Pray through as you're looking in those libraries. Oh, that would be great to communicate that. Or I see that template. I could just change that from the book of John to the book of James, and that's great. That's it. So I would start there. I would start by praying through what God wants you to communicate, and go browse our libraries, and pray through downloading one of those things, and see if it works. Try it out. Try downloading something and putting it into your presentation software or your social media account, and see if that helps bring stuff together more.
No, that's so good. Something that we ask every person that comes on the podcast. I'm interested to hear your answer on this. We're all about empowering healthy churches. In your opinion, what would you say is one essential component of a healthy church?
I'm going to answer this in a little bit different way. I'm
here for it. Yeah, let's hear it.
Before. You ready? I would say define. If I'm a ministry leader and I'm trying to think what's one essential component of a healthy church, I would say define what you mean by healthy. What do you mean by that? That's been a buzzword in ministry for a long time, right? And I've been in churches of all stripes that thought they were healthy and they weren't, or were healthy every which way. So and it's been interesting. I've been at churches that I was on staff at, and we're in such a healthy place right now. And then a few years later, something major crashes or happens, and it's, we're in a really healthy place right now. Okay, well, which is it? Were you in a healthy place then or healthy place now? And how did you measure that or define that?
Sure.
I'm confused. So I would say an essential component of a healthy church is being able to define and measure the word healthy. Does that mean that we are growing numerically? Does that mean that more people are in a small group? Does that mean that we're planting campuses? Does that mean that what are those measurable points that you would say this is our measure of health? Do you more baptisms, more salvations? Obviously, those need to be a measuring factor, right? Yeah. So I would say define it on paper, write it down, make it measurable so that you can clearly see growth or decline.
Yeah. No, that's so good.
Sorry if I'm stepping on.
Oh, no. I think it's great. No, something that we like to do just to kind of wrap things up is we have a final five, kind of a rapid fire round of questions. Would you be up for kind of ending things with that?
Let's go.
Okay. All right. They're going to be coming at you fast.
All right.
What would you say is one book that you would recommend for church leaders? Maybe it's visual related, or maybe it's just about being healthy.
So right now I'm reading a book called Shepherds for Sale. It's very interesting. But I would recommend it for church leaders, whether you agree or disagree. She names names. It's kind of interesting, but I would say just to kind of know where you are and kind of know where you stand and all that, I would say Shepherds for Sale.
Awesome. The second one is, what is the last thing that you listen to on Apple Music or Spotify, wherever you listen to your music?
Okay, so I'm an audiobook guy, so I'm listening to Shepherds for Sale right now, and then I would say Daily Wire. I'm a big podcast guy, and then 80s and 90s music. So I have
you already kind of said,
80s and 90s music. So I have a playlist we call it the Epic Road Trip Mix. That's right, and it's got everything on it from worship music to 80s, 90s, Christian, secular, yeah. Everything.
Awesome.
So, Epic Road Trip Mix.
I knew that maybe some 80s and 90s music would come in on that one.
Yeah, buddy.
What would you say is your favorite piece of technology or software these days?
Okay, this is going to sound. I mean, the cell phone. I don't go anywhere without my cell phone. I mean, I can, but like I usually, oh God, where's my phone? Where'd I put my phone? I don't, maybe I'm addicted, but like I would say the cell phone is just so revolutionary. You can do so much with it. I just bought a Mac Studio. So, I mean, there's that.
That's it. That's
so, all right.
I was expecting something design related, right?
There you go. Yeah. So I got to tell you a funny story. I'll make it really quick. So my computer, I had the trash can computer from like 2013.
Right. The Mac Tower,
trash can, right? It was like the trash can like that. I went from a big cheese grater to like a trash can. I take it into the Apple store a few months ago, and they had only sold this trash can version for like a few months, maybe a year. And so all the employees at the Genius Bar were like looking at it and like whisper, "I've never seen that. I've never seen it."
Yeah.
It's like a gem. It was like a treasure.
Yeah.
It's like the thing in Indiana Jones. Like I had to, didn't want anybody to steal it. So there you go.
That's awesome. And now they've got the tiniest computers. Mac's got the tiniest computers like you that have ever come out before. It's crazy.
I know.
What would you say is a quote or maybe a piece of advice that has kind of stuck with you over the years?
I had a college professor that said this line, and I loved it. It's more time with less people equals greater results. More time with less people equals greater results. So as a leader, can you lead 200 people? Probably not effectively. Spend more time with less people, and it will make a bigger impact.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool. The last one is, what is one thing that you would like to communicate to our audience of church leaders today?
I mean, I'm going to say lean into visuals. Like we are, as a church, we are declining. And I think that a way to reach people, especially younger generations, is with visual media. You have to capture their attention. Whether we like it or not, we are competing. If they're watching, the latest streaming service, and then they go to church, and your thing is super cheesy, and it looks like it's from 1982. Yeah. Do they notice? Yeah, they notice. Yeah. And so I'm not saying that we have to spend millions of dollars making the next Avengers. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is lean into visuals. They matter. Your visuals really do matter in reaching people.
I love that. Carl, this has been so good. Where can people follow you? Where can they find you? Where can they get the visuals that you've talked about today? I know we talked about it being in CMG and Share Faith and in the Amplify Media, all those places. But tell us about where we can find all of you specifically and even more of this great content.
Yeah, churchvisuals.com is our website. There's a ready-made library there. We do custom media there, and we do training there. So podcasts and articles, all on this kind of stuff, like all on like how do you take ready-made and make it in your content?
Yes.
How do you download stuff, and how do you change it in Canva, and all that kind of stuff. We help you teach you how to do that step by step, really simple, so you don't have to really overly exert yourself. So yeah, churchvisuals.com, and then I'm at Carl Barnhill everywhere. So man, Kendall, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate you letting me share.
No, I love it. Thank you for all of us. And I would just encourage everybody, maybe you've never heard of the stuff that we're talking about today. You want to see some examples. We're going to link everything up in the show notes so you can go and find all of these. And I would just encourage you to check it out because it can make such a big difference. Carl, thank you so much for your time today, for all of your wisdom. And to everyone who's listening and watching along, I just want to say thank you for sticking with us, for checking this out. If you know anyone at your church, maybe you've got a friend in ministry, someone who would benefit from hearing this conversation, I would just encourage you and really just ask you as a personal favor to me is to share it. Share this with somebody. Get the word out about this because we just have a heart that we want to help churches all over to be healthier than ever. And I know that conversations like this really can play a big part in that. So if you're watching or if you're listening to the podcast, follow us there and leave a review. You wouldn't believe how much of a difference that makes. And if you're watching along today on YouTube, hit that subscribe button because that makes such a big difference. We want you to be able to see all of our next videos that we put out. And so thank you for being a part of this today. Again, Carl, thank you. And to everyone who's listening, we hope to see you next time right back here on the Church Leadership Lab podcast.
This episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast is brought to you by Ministry Brands, the largest provider of church technology software. Over 90,000 churches rely on Ministry Brands for their single platform solution that brings together all the digital tools a church needs. From online giving to websites to church management software and more, Ministry Brands is leading the way in simple to use, innovative solutions, all with the goal of empowering healthy churches. To learn more, visit ministrybrands.com.